session. All right. Here we go. Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, Monday, April 5th, 2021. It is 5:30 in the afternoon. Just a quick reminder to everyone, if you would go ahead and silence or put your electronic devices on silent or on vibrate. We can keep the distractions down to a minimum. Roll call, please.
Evans. Here. Dancer.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Yes, here.
Russ.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 3 on our agenda is the COVID update. Once again, we have our director here from the 1st District Health Unit, Ms. Lisa Clute. Appreciate your time once again, Ms. Clute, and you have the latest on the vaccination updates and or other statistics for us.
Well, I think I'm on, right?
Yes, you are.
All right. So, good evening, Mayor and council members. So, I have good news to report. I'll give you the Ward County numbers, and maybe I'll give you 1st District totals too. So, at this point, in Ward County, we have given 27,752. Again, that does not include doses provided by the by the Minot Air Force Base. In total, in the 1st District, in the 7 areas, we have given 42,395 doses. We have in Ward County 36.6% of the population with at least 1 dose in. That's compared to 1st District, a total of 38% of the population has received 1 dose. So to break that down a little bit further for you, in Ward County, the 75 and older, we have 2,959 people fully vaccinated out of 4,039 in that population, so a percentage of 71.6%. In the 65 to 74-year-olds, we have 3,326 vaccinated out of a total population of 4,886, so a total of 68.1% of that population is vaccinated. In the adults, ages 18 to 64, we have 9,987 people vaccinated out of a total population of 42,646. That's a percentage of 23.4%. My guess, and that's all it is a guess, is that most of the vaccinations provided by the Minot Air Force Base is in that age group, in that 18 to 64 age group. So I would expect that that age group has a higher percentage, but that's the data that we have available. So that gives you an update on where we're at in the vaccine. We continue. Getting vaccine in is no problem, and we have it available for anybody that wants vaccine now. You can utilize your providers or 1st District or pharmacies. At this point, I can tell you tomorrow at 1st District, we do have some openings for Pfizer vaccine for 1st doses. Then Wednesday through Saturday, we will be doing 2nd doses at 1st District Health Unit. We do have 300 doses available of the Johnson & Johnson next week on Monday that we will be doing at 1st District. So if people have been waiting for the Johnson & Johnson and haven't been able to access it, we will have 300 doses available. At this time, only 50 of them are spoken for. So call and make your appointment if you're waiting and wanting that Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Again, that's a one vaccination injection, so you wouldn't need the 2 doses. So we'll continue to make that information available. We continue to promote and make clinics available on our website, social media, as many places as we can get the information out to. We have also been working with the providers, and we are hearing the same from everybody. Right now, we are typically receiving more vaccine than what we have people wanting vaccine. So we will continue to provide information on the vaccine, address people's concerns, or try to answer their questions that they may have on that, and more to come on that throughout the next weeks and so. But we truly are working on an education. I think there's just a lot of misinformation, as with everything, and rumors and so forth about vaccines, and sometimes they just need to talk to somebody that has specific information and can provide them the answers, or deal with the questions that they may have specific to their health conditions or risks and so forth. So again, we are taking calls of all kinds at First District, and call anytime. We have a host of people ready to answer those calls. We do, I can tell you that at this point we have 2 of the variants in our area that we are seeing, and we continue to watch those. If you're watching out in the eastern part of the state, and what we're seeing here too is it's mostly cases in the younger kids and the younger adults. So that, and it's difficult. I know last week there were a fairly significant amount of K through 12 cases in the eastern part of the state. They were seeing that, and they will, I'm sure they're being impacted by the variants also. So they just spread more rapidly. And I think also we may have cases out there, people aren't getting tested as often as what they used to be. However, we're still providing that, and we still are having pretty good uptake on the tests. And with travel, that is the biggest thing. They have to have the PCR test, which is the test that we do at First District. They can't do the rapid test for travel. And so they schedule and make the appointments, and I would say probably 40% of those appointments are travel related now that we're doing. So we'll continue to do those to assure that people can travel when they want. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
As always, I appreciate your time, Ms. Clute. Any questions at this time? I think you answered all of mine, Lisa. Thank you again. I appreciate all of the information. The Minot Fire Department is also continuing with its rapid testing program. Those schedules do continue to change, or I think evolve week by week, so you do want to check out minotnd.org for the latest testing schedule on that, or you can also find them through our social media pages. Next on our agenda is item number 4, and that is the mayor's report. Of course, we did have a continued progression of different activities through the month of March with the state legislature still in session here. Let me turn on my controller here. Quick rundown of some of my different meetings and activities. Did have a couple of different flood home acquisition closings in the month of March, as well as Water Coalition meetings, testifying in opposition to House Bill 1386 on the third COVID Coalition meeting. Military Affairs Committee, that was our last of what we hope is a virtual meeting. League of Cities have all been virtual to this point on Fridays. We did have on the 8th an opportunity to get together back for the Citizen of the Year presentation to the Lord's Cupboard. If you'll notice, the check says $1,500 from First International Bank and Trust. That's because $1,000 of that was originally from the Citizen of the Year sponsored by First International Bank, and then the employees got together out of their fund and donated another $500 to the Lord's Cupboard. So very appreciative of that. On the 8th, we did have a Task Force 21 meeting and then provided written testimony on House Concurrent Resolution 3040. On the 10th, we did have another Chamber EDC Board League of Cities legislative update. On the 15th, as I mentioned at our previous meeting, Ward County Weed Board meeting, as I think that's going to be a continued interesting season, as our weather has just been very difficult, and I know that's when grass doesn't grow, weeds tend to find a way. So I think our budget there is going to be tested this year. I did testify on the 17th in support of House Bill 1431 and then in opposition of House Bill 1165. Flood control home acquisition on the 19th, and then Team Minot breakfast at Minot Air Force Base in person, and then was back in Bismarck on the 22nd that afternoon in support of House Bill 1020. Just last of some of my, I think, more notables here, League of Cities virtual update. Legislative Topic City podcast that aired over the weekend with city manager, myself, that we did with our PIO. If you haven't had a chance, that is a good little rundown of some of the different legislative activities, and then a couple of different interviews that I did, and I'm sure I'm missing a few there as well. There were 23 other meetings regarding city business, and again, always with the phone calls, emails, social media, staff interactions, or personal interactions with folks, which is actually nice to see being able to do that after after 2020. So are there any questions on some of my different meetings and activities for the month of March? As always, League of Cities does do their recap on their website that anybody can click on and view. That is basically some of the League of Cities hot topics. And then, of course, they do have interactions with different mayors from around the cities in North Dakota, as well as just kind of the general direction that the legislature is going right now. And, of course, we've all been paying attention that we're expecting an early finish to the legislative session, as I think that they're planning on holding some of those days back if they do have to call a special session sometime in later 2021 or early 2022. With that, I do have then next on my agenda here a proclamation. With this, I'll first read it and then I'll come down for the presentation here for the proclamation. City of Minot Mayor proclaims April Parkinson's Awareness Month, whereas Parkinson's disease is a chronic progressive neurological disease and is the second most common neurodegenerative disease in the United States. Whereas Parkinson's disease is estimated to affect approximately 1 million people in the United States, and the prevalence will more than double by 2040. Whereas Parkinson's disease is the 14th leading cause of death in the United States, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Whereas it is estimated that the economic burden of Parkinson's disease is at least $14.4 billion with a B annually, including indirect cost to patients and family members of $6.3 billion. Whereas research suggests that the cause of Parkinson's disease is a combination of genetic and environmental factors, but the exact cause of the progression of the disease is still unknown. Whereas there is no objective test or biomarker for Parkinson's disease, and there is no cure or drug to slow the halt the progression of the disease. Whereas the symptoms of Parkinson's disease vary from person to person and can include tremors, slowness of movement and rigidity, difficulty with balance, swallowing, chewing, and speaking, cognitive impairment and dementia, mood swings, and a variety of other non-motor symptoms. Whereas volunteers, researchers, caregivers, and medical professionals are working to improve the quality of life of persons living with Parkinson's diseases and their families. Whereas increased research, education, and community support service such as those provided by the Parkinson's Foundation and other organizations are needed to find more effective treatment and to provide access to the quality of care of those living with the disease daily. Now, therefore, do I, Sean Sitma, the mayor of Minot, North Dakota, do hereby proclaim the month of April in 2021 as Parkinson's Awareness Month. Now, I was asked to come down and sign, and a representative here is here as well to snap a picture. You want to come forward? 'Holly Jacobs, I'm proud to hand you this proclamation in appreciation for bringing this forward to our attention, and of course with the awareness that it brings, and so many other people, folks that I know that have not only contracted but succumbed to the disease. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take a picture right there.
I got plenty.
Okay.
And if you have any short remarks, you can certainly do those right now. If not, appreciate you being here.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? No? I do have an event coming up, Ladies Blingo, if any of you are interested.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Four 4.2 is the mayoral appointments. I do have a couple of different appointments in front of you this afternoon.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderwoman Olson.
I would move both of your appointments.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Quadrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That does end my report. Number 5 on our agenda is
Mr. Mayor, before you move on to that, could I add one thing to your report?
By all means, please.
Thank you. One thing that you did not put in your report, and something that I always appreciate, is the articles in the Minot Daily News. Always keeping people up to date on what is happening within the city, and I appreciate those. And I was reading it this Saturday and, learned some things that I wasn't aware of, but I also read kind of a distressing letter to the editor that I just want to address briefly. There was a concerned citizen who chose to write a letter to the editor instead of, I'm assuming, reaching out to anyone on this dais or any of our city staff. And so I just want to give everyone just a reminder that we are here to answer questions. So if there are any kind of projects or things that are going on within the city that you're questioning, give us a call, give the city manager a call, give one of our department heads a call, because they will fill you in on the correct information.
Thank you, Alderwoman Olson. And ironically enough, that is my next letter to the editor regarding kind of a review working with Mr. Zakian on the progress of our NDR projects. So, thank you. Number 5 is our city manager's report. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, council members, obviously within your packet is a detailed memo of lots of the happenings throughout the organization and throughout the community. I did want to take a little bit of time tonight, and we'll ask Mr. Lakefield to join me as we talk a little bit about the budget coming up. So legislative session is winding down. It seems most bills that are either going to pass or reaching their final stages, or those bills that weren't going to pass are now more or less dead at this point. And so staff is beginning to turn its attention towards the budget process. And so within the memo is a draft outline of what the budget schedule would be. And Mr. Lakefield will be happy to answer any questions in that. One change that I would like to make to this that I have seen successful in previous communities that I've served in is implementing a council tour of the departments with a budget focus. This is meant to be an informal meeting. It is an open public meeting anytime you have a quorum of the council, so we will abide by all open state laws, open meeting laws. But the intent is to be a little bit less formal, but to get you out and about the organization and the departments, and to see firsthand all the things that staff are doing or dealing with that has budget consideration. And so staff will be directed to answer 3 questions for the council. That is to show council what they did with last year's budget, show them what they're doing with this year's budget, and then show you what they're asking for in the upcoming budget for consideration. And anyway, I've always found that to be very positive and very beneficial. And so as Mr. Lakefield will go over the schedule with you, we will be looking at trying to fit that in sometime in late April, early May timeframe. We'd like to do that before we get into more of the strategic planning process, where council will have direct input into what your priorities are for the budget going forward on behalf of the community. So staff can make sure that as we work on balancing the budget, that those are incorporated in. But I always find this to be a very informational process for the council, and really delineates a higher level conversation when the council participates at that point in the process. With that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Lakefield to cover the budget process.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I did include in my monthly update a tentative schedule for the upcoming budget. This is based on what we have done in the past. As Mr. Stewart had indicated, we want to incorporate some department tours in the schedule as well. I think we're anticipating late April, perhaps early May, so fairly early in the schedule. It's kind of a guideline. We have brought this to council for approval in the past. I don't think the schedule is required, but it definitely gives us something to work from and some clear guidance on what the time frame will be. We do have some statutory deadlines here. We have to present or approve and present the preliminary budget to the county by August 10th. We have to have our final budget approved by October 7th and presented to the county no later than October 10th. So we do have some statutory deadlines in here as well. So we have to work backwards from there to make sure that we have everything bound and printed and ready to go from there. And just another reminder, once we approve the preliminary budget, we cannot increase our budget. After the preliminary budget to the final budget, we can go down, we just can't go up. So we have some other limitations imposed as well in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Lakefield. Any questions for Dave while he's at the podium? Alderwoman Evans.
I don't have a question as much, but May 3rd is the city council meeting agenda item to outline budget priorities, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Evans, that is correct.
So I just want the, people listening and stuff to know, right? Like, although we are your elected representatives, we want inputs, from people and, residents of the city on, the priorities we should have as a city. So please, if there's a way, you can come to the May 3rd meeting to provide input, please do, or reach out to any of us before that meeting to share your voice and your priorities. So thank you for providing these dates. If folks want to see all of the dates, they're included in the city manager report that is included in the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Any further questions? I actually just have one, Dave. With the state legislative forecast, and I know that's kind of a whole different world when it comes to their forecasting, and then just even taking a look at our sales tax collections, and I think the graph, like you have stated before, it's kind of a guessing game of which roller coaster portion that we're on when it comes to the revenues. Is there any indication, though, from what the state forecast for the next biennium and kind of where sales taxes have been, even across the state, on what projections might look like for 2021?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to defer a little bit just because 2 data points, but we were fairly conservative in our budget estimates for the revenues in the preparation of the 2021 budget. And what we have seen so far, if we continue on that track, we'll be, we're anticipating to at least meet our budget expectations or be slightly over. The latest revenue projections from the state, point us in an optimistic view. I think especially in the Hub City funding area, As long as the oil prices remain somewhat stable and production continues to inch up slightly, I think we'll be just fine there. Again, the sales tax numbers are kind of the unknown. We had a little bit of a disappointing January number. February was somewhat stronger, but we're optimistic that we're going to have a bigger number in February because of maybe some timing issues or something like that. Retail is a struggling sector in today's environment, so we continue to watch that and keep an eye on it.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Lakefield. Seeing no further questions, I would look then back to our city manager for anything further.
Mr. Mayor, if I could
please
add
continue.
one additional thing that isn't in the budget schedule, but that also impacts our timing, is we anticipate issuing bonds again this year. We have a couple of special assessment districts that we know are coming forward, and again, we're anticipating issuing some bonds for flood control project. I think our expectation is that we want to stay somewhat on the same schedule as we were last year, so we'd look for that to take place in late July, early August type of time frame. Typically, in years past, it was a later fall issuance of the debt. We want to make sure that we're prepared and take advantage of the rate environment that's out there today. And after some discussion, I think that'll be our target, is late July, early August. It'll be during the budget process, but then we'll have a pretty good idea exactly where we're going to be revenue side of the picture, and also what we have coming up for projects in the next year or so as well.
All right. Thank you.
I guess with that, would you just, and I don't know if council wants to discuss this tonight or staff can work with you more closely here before the end of this week about what you want to do as far as scheduling the department tours. Be happy to hear any feedback. It will be a significant time commitment, but I think it's time well spent in helping educate and connect with the challenges and priorities that we have facing us from a fiscal standpoint going forward. I would concur with Alderwoman Evans' comment earlier. This is probably one of the most important processes we do as a local government because we really are setting the direction of the community and the organization for the next 12 months. And so oftentimes some of the frustration I see that the public has as council and staff make decisions is they tend to participate at the wrong points in the process. And this is a very open point of the process and a very influential point in the process. So again, I would concur with Alderwoman Evans that if the public has any concerns or issues of either of areas where the city is spending money that we shouldn't or areas that we're not spending money that we should, now is the best time and opportunity to bring those concerns so they be considered as council and staff deliberate in balancing the budget to move the community and the organization forward. So with that, unless council has any input as far as timing of and schedule of the department tours, or there's any other questions for me, I don't have anything else underneath the city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. And perhaps maybe if we can get some input back to his office within the next 7 days. I would anticipate that we're looking for those tours last week of April, early part of May as a time frame. And if we have conflicts on those, we need to let our folks know as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Any questions before I move on? Okay. Number 6 on our agenda is the City Attorney's Report. Ms. Hendershot.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I submitted a written report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for our city attorney? A number of different items that had updates on there, and we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you, Kelly. That takes us to our next section of our agenda this afternoon. That is the consent items. We had 24 different items on our consent agenda. We're going to pull 7.7 for individual discussion, as we do need to change verbiage on that a little bit. Just look around to see if there are any other single items that need to be pulled for individual discussion. If not, all of the items will be passed on consent with recommendations from staff. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve. Is there a second? Second. Second by Alderman Ross. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yep.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Dancer.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 7.7, the bid award for the fire department trench prop. The fire department received one bid for construction of one trench training prop to be used by staff to safely teach and maintain technical skills in trench rescue. The recommendation to City Council is to accept a bid from Height Construction in the amount of $69,500 to construct the trench training prop at the Minot Fire Department Training Facility. The addition that we do need added on for a motion is contingent upon EPA approval, as the land does have some implications that need to be cleared through EPA approval.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Janser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Final call for discussion. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Dancer,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yep.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to our next section of our agenda, the action items. First one is a public hearing, 8.1. Public hearing for taxi license denial, Christopher Bruner. On March 26, 2021, Christopher Bruner filed an application for a City of Minot taxi driver's license. A background check was conducted, which revealed Mr. Bruner had a conviction of assault. The recommendations to the City Council is to ratify the decision to deny the City of Minot taxi driver's license to Christopher Bruner based on his disqualifying criminal record. This is, again, a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or in opposition to the recommendation. Your name and city of residence for the record, please.
My name is Christopher Bruner, live here in the city of Minot.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Okay, the reason why I called this was to find out if I'm able to be eligible to renew a taxi license. I previously worked for the company driving as a cab driver. I was approved December 19th of 2018 for a cab license. I switched employment for management through another company, went back to the taxi company, now full-time dispatch, and with the higher travel that's going on from the border and stuff, we need a lot of drivers to contend with the eligibility to drive in town. And with past experience, no more criminal activity or anything, I'm just want to know if I'm eligible. Where do I go from this? What do I do? Just basically get a standpoint from it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner, for being here this afternoon. The way the current ordinance that is written is that it reads "shall be denied," and I'm just referencing a few of our previous taxi driver's licenses that have come before us. So with our city ordinances that read "shall be denied," really limits and actually limits entirely the ability of the council to override our city law. Down the road, I'm understood that there may be some potential changes that could be coming. I have not seen what those look like, but for right now, the challenge that we have with anybody that may have a compelling argument to maybe turn around the decision really is out of our hands because of our current ordinance and law. I would just suggest that pay attention over the next probably 2 months. Unfortunately, the system does run a little bit slower because we only meet every 2 weeks. And I would expect that to possibly or potentially be coming in April, whatever that verbiage looks like moving forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner, for being here. Again, this is a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or in opposition to the recommendation. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council? I'm sorry, Chief, if you do have some information.
Mayor, members of council, if you have any questions, I am available to answer those. But as you stated earlier, does say shall, and this does rely on the 10-year violent crime conviction. So that's why I denied the license.
Thank you, Chief. I couldn't see you behind the camera. Any questions for our chief? Thank you, sir. What are the wishes of the council? Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we uphold the decision of the police chief and close the public hearing and deny the license.
Motion made by Alderman Janser to close the public hearing and uphold the decision to deny the license. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Ross. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Final call. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.2 on our agenda, the paving District 499, the Family Rec Addition, create District 4591. The Improvement District is a petition project brought by the Minot Park District. This project provided access to and parking for the Minot Park District's day-of-use parking location off of County Road 15 West. This area is also known as Family Recreation Addition. A number of recommendations before us. One is create a paving District 499. 2, direct preparations of the engineer's report. 3, approve the engineer's report. 4, direct preparations of plans and specifications. 5, waive the resolution of necessary and public hearings since all of the district area has petitioned for the project. 6, approve the request for KLJ to provide the necessary engineering services, authorize the city engineer to negotiate a scope and fee, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract on the city's behalf. And 7, approve the budget amendment and reimbursement resolution. Wishes of the council.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? We did have a little bit of correspondence earlier this afternoon on the questioning of the waiver of the public hearing, and the answer to that is in number 5 for anyone who might be watching. All of the district area petitioned for the project, which is the reason for the waiver. Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.3, the right-of-way permit fee resolution adoption. The engineering department issued a right-of-way permits to contractors to enable them to perform work within the public right-of-way. The department cannot find the last time the permit fees were updated. Thus, staff is recommending the fees be updated to cover the cost of administering the permits. Recommendation is to approve the attached resolution setting right-of-way permit fees.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman
Second.
Ross to approve, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Final call for discussion. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.4, the Parklet and Streetery Program for Outdoor Dining. Parklets and streeteries are platforms with fencing on 3 sides that extend from a downtown sidewalk's curb into the parking space and have the footprint a little smaller than the full-size car. The level platform improves and expands the outdoor dining, which can help and address the general demand for outdoor seating. The proposed program is based on similar programs around the country, including those in Grand Forks, North Dakota. The platforms are only temporary and can be in place for 6 months from April 15th until October 15th. The recommendations from staff is to approve the Parklet Streetery Program policy. We do have handouts and I believe a presentation or at least some documentation here from staff as well. So good afternoon.
Hello, Mayor, and members of the Board of Aldermen, City Council. I give you a little presentation. Now, I have covered this individually, so I'm doing this for the benefit of everyone who would be interested in what this is about. This is a definition that I think you've covered already, Mayor. I don't need to belabor that. Again, if you think of it as an extension of the sidewalk and a use of a parking space. This is a visual example of how this is done. It can be done as a by the name Parklet means, kind of a small park. I don't think that that would be commonly used. It would be more likely a streetery, which means outdoor seating for a restaurant. So again, here's an example. This example, it happens to be someone drew it for another location. This is bigger than the one that we are proposing. This is about 2 parking spaces. But you do get a good idea of what's going on. You see that along the building, there's seating for a restaurant, outdoor dining, but it also can be along the streetery. You see that it accommodates a wheelchair and that people can pass through whether they're using a wheelchair or walking through there in any other way. It shows that there's some seating, some tables, and that's, again, how it would be typically used. This example shows it in cross-section. You can see there's a support along the curb line, which is on the left of the drawing, and follows the crown of the road, but it's tapered so that it provides a level seating surface and use surface. It's level with the curb line. The one thing that's a little different here that we are, at the request of engineering, the one support near the curb line, we would have about an 18-inch space to make certain that any stormwater were able to flow along the curb line. Again, we didn't commission somebody to draw specific drawings, but it's a pretty close facsimile of what we're doing. Now, these are the guidelines. The guidelines, this is done for presentation purposes. They're a little shorter. The guidelines that you have and are being asked to adopt are quite a bit longer, have a few more specifics, and certainly want to answer questions if you have any. We did talk about the period already. This is only up during the warmer months of the year. It would not be up at all during any normally expected snow. I mean, we could get snow tomorrow, but it's not too common to get too much snow in April or early October. Has to be ADA accessible. We want everybody to be able to continue to use the sidewalks. We're bonded for removal. Has to be designed by a professional. And again, it accommodates stormwater. We have site selection. It would only be in parking lanes. It would only be on streets. Let me muffle myself a little less, excuse me. We would have a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less. That is typically only downtown. They would have a designated space. It would be right in front of their establishment and within essentially the imaginary lines that are drawn by the 2 sides of the building out to the street. There'd be curb and roadside drainage would have to be maintained, and again, they couldn't block public transit. I might also add that in terms of all these things that you've seen, we did have the input from Public Works and from engineering, and we responded to concerns that they had. Amenities that could be involved with this would be low voltage lighting. The seating would have to be either bolted to the platform, or they'd have to remove it at night, bring it inside, or chain it down, chain cable probably. They could integrate planting. Essentially, there'd be a barrier. If you think of the barrier in front of you from the dais, essentially you can't tumble into the street or do something accidental in that regard. You keep them separate. We would allow for tents and heaters that would not be allowed together with a tent because of fire hazard, and bicycle parking. This is an example of how we are not suggesting this for angled parking as shown here, but you do get a good overhead view of what the planting would be along the perimeter, and again, how you might have, this is more of a parklet than for eating, but again, fixed seating. This would give you an idea of what the platform might look like with some chairs on it. This isn't particularly dense. We are not suggesting that where the deer head is shown, that we would have one that high. We don't want to block the view of the streets or the buildings along the facades. This also, it shows what the barrier might look like. These are also too high, but it gives you an idea of why you don't want it that high, because you don't want to block the view of the facade. There's a little bit better view, and again, low seating. This does not have that barrier. The barriers are shown by the seats themselves, but I think we're going to have a little closer view. But it gives you an idea of how it's been done elsewhere. This is actually a very good example of the kind of thing that we're looking at, where you have essentially a fence around the three sides. So again, to keep it separate, and we would have reflectors on the corner. Oh, let me go back. Again, it gives it size. There'd be curb blocks on each end to prevent anybody from overrunning the facility. And it does require city approval from our planning department, from engineering regarding the encroachment on the city street, and did I say building department? Building department. And the building department would inspect it every year. You'd have to think of it as a deck, and that it's a temporary deck, and then it's being reinstalled every year. So it gets an inspection every year when it gets placed back down. Again, eligible applicants, this isn't particularly complicated. Again, a few more examples. The one on the left shows it with lighting, and then shows other barriers. I don't think this is a particularly good example, but it shows how it can be done. And that's the end of that. I gave a copy of this to you, left it at your desk. Actually, here's a quick view. By the way, I'm also going to thank Derek for making it look nice. Again, it's defined. This is really done for more promotional reasons, but it's available. Again, it shows how encroachment permits and these kinds of things are done. And this will be, again, for promotional purposes. People are aware of this if they want to do this. We based this has been done in a number of cities. It started in San Francisco in particular, but it's really been done all over the country in places more like Minot. This one is specifically based on what they did in Grand Forks. And although we've added to it quite a bit, but it is done right here in the state. And a city of pretty similar size. Again, they have to have insurance so that the city is indemnified. There's really very little cost. We're talking about, there's an encroachment permit that they have to pay. The building permit, they have to pay. And then there's a street dining application that they would fill out. There's also a fee for that. So it's covered, and for the most part, there should be very little cost to the city. I would never say none, but it's really rather few. And I would anticipate having 2 or 3 in the first year, and probably never going more than 5 or 6 of these. But do you lose a parking space? You sure do. On the other hand, you gain a lot by having outdoor dining, and the fact that we want to encourage outdoor dining at this time is a good thing. That covers most of it. I've got, again, a frequently asked question sheet here. Again, I've had a chance to meet with all of you at one time or another, and we've covered this, but there may be new questions, and I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Jonathan. I forgot to introduce you right away, by the way. I apologize for that, Jonathan Rosenthal, the Economic Development Administrator for the city of Minot. One of the questions that I have is where can people find this? Is it on our website? Are the applications on our website?
Not yet, because it just was finished and it hasn't been adopted yet.
Okay.
But as soon as if if the council decides to support this, it'll go up on the website. That's exactly where it'll go. It'll be under community development, community and economic development.
Alderman Ross.
Just a couple quick questions. You did answer the interest. What kind of interest did you gauge primarily downtown? You did mention that there were
Right.
2 or 3. The other question is, with cost to the city and fees, what are you suggesting for the applicable fees for this, since, in essence, they're encroaching or they're temporarily leasing street or property from the city?
Well, those are standard.
In hopes to recover our costs.
Right, absolutely. Well, first, to put one thing in perspective, people are allowed to park in the parking spots right now for free. So anybody can take it up for free for 4 hours today. And the fact that we do overtime parking occasionally, but there's no actual sacrifice of revenue that you would have if we had parking meters. And that's worth just keeping that in mind. In terms of the fees, though, there's an inspection fee and a permitting fee that varies on the value of what the building cost is. Quick estimate, probably in about the $5,000 range, but I'm afraid I haven't done a calculation of what that would mean to the city coffers. But it does mean that each year that they have to do an inspection and go out, they'll be charged a fee that's meant to cover most of the cost of having the inspector out there. So it should be pretty close to break even for everybody.
Any other questions at this time? Alderwoman Evans.
Mr. Rosenthal, it's my understanding that you have been doing this in collaboration with some downtown businesses.
Sure.
And that there's a few that are ready to go, right? If we approve this, we will see these parklets or streeteries this summer already.
I think you'd see 2 for sure.
Right, right.
I think there's a third, but 2 have told me that they'd be ready to go.
Great. Love it.
It's just good to give them a little time to do it and make use. If we were approving this on, October 1st, we probably wouldn't get too many people responding right away. But yeah, most of the season is ahead of us, and I think you'll get 2 right away.
Right.
And again, I think just in terms of anybody feeling cautious about it, if this, for any reason, doesn't work out the way it's worked out, so many other places, but if for some reason that didn't, when these are pulled up in October and for some reason between now and, next April, the city council could just say, look, we're discontinuing it. It's not working. But I don't think that's going to happen. But it's pretty conservative. You got a pretty cautious approach here because you'll see how it is in 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate all the efforts you put in to,
thank you.
You've hit the ground running with your new position, and I appreciate it. And this is, exactly, I know one of the things I was looking forward to with the addition of this position in the city. And so I love it, and I can't wait to see more things like this, Mr. Rosenthal. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Alderman Janser.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rosenthal, I noticed, and I think you said this, but I want to just clarify it. So in a couple of your examples, I noticed that there were these in an area where there was diagonal parking.
We're not suggesting it for angled parking. I happen to show it as an example because it was a good overhead view, but it's a little too complicated to do in angled parking. It's a little too thin, odd angles.
Yeah, well, I guess that's my point. That eliminates a fair chunk of downtown Main Street.
Yeah, there's one side of the street that would
And so, I guess as we go forward, maybe I would wonder if we couldn't try to figure that out so that it perhaps could be included.
I guess my recommendation would be simply because the shape, and you can see from this example that.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Okay.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
But
Well, the thing with this example, you'll see it doesn't even fit the angle of this parking space here. I think you could probably do it if you took 2 spaces.
Sure.
But obviously it takes more. I think the good news is that in terms of where most of the restaurants are now and the ones that are interested right now, that's just parallel parking. So it's not an issue at the moment, but it could be addressed.
Okay, yeah. I'm supportive of this. I just, I'd like it to be as
That's right, it could
flexible
be
as we
addressed,
can
but I
be.
think you'd have to take 2 spaces if you made it for angled parking.
And to Alderman Chancellor's point, and to Mr. Rosenthal, I think if we saw maybe a surge of people that are looking for the availability of this, and the others are highly successful, we can certainly come back and revisit that issue if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. Jonathan, I've obviously been a part of this
Yes.
with you in these discussions for a while. And again, I want to thank you for your effort and the other staff department heads that have helped you with this and worked on this. These are
Effort.
absolutely, and it's as simple as this concept may be. This is not an easy lift to make sure that it fits for our community, and Jonathan has done exactly that along with other departments. And again, I applaud you for this. This is such a neat idea and can be such a game-changing element for downtown and other businesses. Again, I'm excited about this. I'm supportive of this. These are the ideas that we just haven't had coming into our community in the past, and this is, I think, like it's been put to me before, a breath of fresh air to have some of these ideas coming in and really broadening the experience. And I think, like I say, this could be the seed that's planted that maybe changes downtown and maybe closing off parking on one side of the street and opening up, whatever it might be. It might be years down the road, but again, these are discussions that I welcome and I think are very thought-provoking and really open the door to other opportunities.
Further discussion or questions?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Motion by Alderman Ross to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. Discussion on the motion. Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Lastly, for folks that may have questions, Mr. Rosenthal talked about the success in Grand Forks. I've personally seen it. It works in Grand Forks. I've seen these in much smaller communities in Montana, western and central Montana, and in South Dakota in communities bigger. So I see this as a very big opportunity if approved. Alderman Pittner.
Just want to maybe make a plug for this if this does what it's about to do and pass. This is a call for our entrepreneurs out there to maybe start a parklet designing business to and I'm 100% serious. As far as a business owner downtown, I'm sure one of the last things that they have time for is taking some of these projects on. But if someone has the ingenuity and the creativity to design these spaces and caretake them, and I mean, this is revenue. If I'm a business owner, this is additional seating at a minimal cost, an outdoor experience. And believe you me, when I get done working outside in 90-degree heat, and my wife wants to go out for dinner, and we get a random date night, the first thing she wants to do is sit outside versus an air-conditioned building. So people want to sit outside, especially downtown where these opportunities are limited. This is a call for some of the entrepreneurs out there to get with your engineering friends and make something happen. So,
Motion is to approve. Final call for discussion. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
yep.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 8.5 is the approval of First District Health Unit Service Agreement. First District Health Unit has provided public health service for Minot residents for a number of years. In 2019, that agreement was formalized with a service agreement that was set to expire on December 31st, 2020. The proposed agreement would formalize that relationship through December 31st, 2021. The recommendation is to approve the agreement with First District Health Unit for providing public health service for fiscal year 2021 and authorize the mayor and finance director to sign the agreement.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to 8.6, the MACEDC, Minot Area Chamber and Economic Development Council Professional Service Agreement. On January 19th, 2021, the Minot City Council approved the contract extension with Minot Area Chamber Economic Development Corporation for various economic development services. The contract expires April 1, 2021. It's recommended the City Council approve the professional service agreement with the Minot Area Chamber, EDC, formerly Minot Area Development Corporation, for the continuation of economic development services through the remainder of 2021 calendar year. Is there a motion? Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Motion to approve by Alderman Janser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Final call, or Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question maybe for Mr. McMartin.
Good evening, John.
Good evening.
Hey, John, I just got a question in regards to MEDC and the Chambers merger and maybe some of the cost savings from lack of travel due to COVID in 2020, as well as salary savings from some of the positions. How many positions weren't filled last year, and what was a ballpark on that dollar amount of cost savings, or was there any?
I'm sure there was some. I wasn't necessarily fully prepared for that, Paul, or Alderman Pittner, I'm sorry. Along with the, besides the dollars that we get from the city, we get some dollars from the county, and we get dollars from member investors. And that member investor pool did diminish last year. Our books are open, and what I will tell you is the dollars that we get from the city are segregated, and they will be continued to be spent on recruiting and bringing people to town. There were additional contracts that were done as we went through the year, responding to largely site selectors. I think since December, I think I've responded to 4 or 5 site selectors that have either come directly to my phone. 2 of them have, and the other 4 were projects that the Department of Commerce sent our way. And so there's time and effort that goes into that. The biggest thing that we spent our time on in the last year, quite frankly, has been the port, a project that has been in the works, and as you all know, for over 20 years. And if we're able to continue to operate the port, it's going to be a significant movement for not only Minot, but for our region and for a large portion of our state. And there has been countless meetings and time and travel involved with that, Paul. I can do some checking and I'll get a number for you.
Be great.
Any other questions for Mr. McMartin? Alderman Pittner, follow-up.
I guess no questions for John at this time. Maybe if somebody else has one.
I think I saw Alderman Patagula that had a question.
Carries, first of all, go forward. Thank you. Quick question, John. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to call you this afternoon. I was very busy preparing for some hearings. That subscription service location, something or other, that's mentioned in there that we're going to be subscribing to, or you're going to be subscribing to?
Yes.
Tell me about it a little bit.
And
it's one. You can jump in after that, Harold. Harold and I, in one of our meetings, Harold brought that up to me about using Lois, and it's.
That's not our police dog.
Pardon?
Not that Lois. Not that Lois.
No. It's the acronym, we had not had time to look into what costs might be for that service, and as a result, the language that you see in the contract was something that Harold and I agreed to, so that if all of a sudden the lowest project was a $35,000 piece of software to buy, that would not be something that would be in our normal operating budget.
But what's the software, I guess I'm asking?
Oh, it's used for, it's used by site selectors. It's one of the more popular pieces of recording vacant buildings, vacant land for sale. They've got a set way of how you report it, so the site selector can go to the site, look at it, and know what information you've got for them. It speeds up their time, because not only have we learned this last year that lack of travel, a lot of that is being done remotely. And if we're going to be competitive in the marketplace where site selectors are going to be looking for things, hopefully because of the intermodal port and the industrial land that we've got, that we can report to them in a way that it's accessible to them. And so you pay a yearly subscription fee. Your staff would be required to upload that. The 75% figure, I think, is something that Harold and staff felt that was probably achievable within 75% within the first year of getting most of the properties uploaded and into that system.
So this would be another example of what we've seen earlier this evening with the eateries and the
Yes.
Thing of some new, fresh thinking, and hopefully going up to a slightly higher level of professionalism and competitiveness with other cities, and seems like maybe a trend here, a good trend.
Mr. McMartin and
Thank you.
Alderman Prodigal, I might look to our city manager, who does have a little bit of firsthand knowledge. I could try to regurgitate what I think I've heard you say about 7 or 8 different times, but I'll let you, Mr. Stewart, kind of give a little brief overview of this type of software system and really how you've seen it work.
Yeah, so Lois consider it like the Zillow of industrial property, buildings, and land, where if you're in the market and looking at a specific region for your business to grow and expand, this is your Zillow that you go to find out whether or not it meets your criteria and to shop a little bit. And so it is designed to provide information that those consumers are looking for, such as what's the utility capacity, what is it zoned, what's its access and proximity to air and rail and highways and interstates and those types of things. And it puts it all in a format that's very user-friendly, searchable. You can set different parameters to filter things out and include things, et cetera. This is a system that is heavily used by site selectors throughout the country. When I was in Nebraska, the state was trying to get it up and running. Iowa was using it pretty heavily. Missouri was using it as well. This is typically something that in most states throughout the country, it is provided to cities, usually at no cost to them. It's usually paid for by like a utility company, particularly electric companies. And in some cases, the states can buy an umbrella policy that allows every city within that state to have access to it. So when I got here and was first doing research on how are we marketing the port, how do people find out whether or not our industrial land is available, or what buildings do we have available, especially these ones that were vacated after the decline of the Bakken boom and those types of things. How do people know that those buildings are there, what square footage is available, et cetera? The only properties I saw in the entire state of North Dakota that were listed on this system were in Fargo and Bismarck. And so I did reach out to John as we discussed our contract and our agreement. I thought this was something that was integral and important and critical to our success of further developing the port and other properties within our community. I think it gives us a better competitive advantage, because you're missing out on a ton of opportunities that when people are shopping, you're not even a blip on the radar because you're not in the system. And so this was something that I did reach out to John and talked about. And I even had a meeting a couple weeks ago with some staff from the Department of Commerce, and they hadn't heard of the system either. And so I'm trying to educate there as well on how this can be beneficial, not only to Minot, but to the state as a whole. was able to have a conversation with a representative from Lois today, and a cost for a community like Minot, which what they call a single license, would be about $4,500 annually, and gives you full scope of services that they have available, including reports, uploading shape files. So if you wanted to outline like your enterprise zone or opportunity zone or something like that, that would be a searchable mechanism for your community as well. So again, I'm not used to communities having to pay for that. That's usually provided by a utility or the state itself. But right now, North Dakota is not to that point, and I think it would behoove us to not wait for that, but to get up and get going. It will take some time. It'll take a significant amount of staff time, I believe, for MAYSA EDC as well, to one, input the data, and two, is make sure that data is up to date, ongoing for the foreseeable future. But I think it will definitely help you connect better with businesses and entities that are looking to relocate and looking for buildings or land in Minot for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Any other questions for Mr. Continue, Mr. McMartin?
I threw site selectors around, and as did the city manager, using Alderman Pittner's example from before with the streeteries. A site selector is an entrepreneur that perhaps Joe's Cabins would hire to look for a place where they could build more cabins to sell to campgrounds. Joe may not have the time to do that, or he may not want his company known. So the site selector becomes a person that promotes and looks for land or a building for that particular business, but you don't know what company you're trying to satisfy the questions for. And it also cuts down on the number of phone calls back when you don't hear from them. You really don't have anybody to pester from my side. But it speeds the process along, and as Harold has said, this software should help facilitate that.
Sounds like a really neat idea. I'm pleased you guys came up with it.
If I can just follow with one more point. So economic development is constantly adapting and changing to circumstances, and particularly with COVID. And one of the things we've seen with COVID is a lot of these site selectors aren't traveling anymore, and 90% of their research is now being done online.
Yep.
And so the better presence you have online, the more information you provide, the more chance of success and probability that you have. And that's exactly what Lois is designed as a tool to help Minot do.
Neat.
Alderwoman Evans, you've been waiting a little while.
Yeah. So in November, we, were approached by Visit Minot for a resiliency and recovery plan. And in that, I think if we go back to that meeting, I was very sort of forthright in saying that I think what that proposal gave us should be the low water mark for how we proceed in spending taxpayer money for outside entities, which was very measurable outcomes, very specific on deliverables. And when I look at what has been provided to us for this, I mean, there's a lot of vagueness. There's a lot of, we'll provide you with key performance indicators afterwards. What I'd like to see is those up front, right? Like we are, going to take over $300,000 of taxpayer money. I would like to know, and I think taxpayers want to see sort of even, our first district healthcare provided specifics in their service